and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the final track, the final presentations on the Pharma MES ScaleUp digital event that we're hosting this year. We have another interesting presentation coming up from Thomas Halfmann from NNIT, and he's going to talk us through how MES can help during this pandemic, during the crisis, and why it's so important. Thomas, I can see that you're connected and online. We can see you already. Let's do a quick sound check to be sure that we can hear you too.
Yeah, hello, Paul. I'm here, so hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much, Thomas.
You see me as well?
We can see you as well. And I'm going to stop my screen sharing, so you can go ahead and try to share your screen yourself.
All right.
That looks good. Perfect.
See my slide in full presentation mode if everything works correctly.
Yes, you're good to go.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Paul. All right. Thank you very much to we.CONECT for having me here on the ScaleUp 360 Pharma MES Europe. I would like today talk a little bit about a different topic. I mean, it is MES related, of course, but I was thinking about a couple of months ago when that all started here in Europe. Well, what could actually an MES contribute to fight the crisis? And let me quickly take you through the agenda. So talk a little bit about the corona crisis and the impact on the ability in order to produce and how manufacturing operations and supply chain are impacted by the crisis, but also how could we as companies prepare for the next crisis. I'm working for NNIT. NNIT is a global life science consulting and service provider in the life science industry in 5 strategic business areas. One of them is production and supply chain. That's the one that I'm heading, and what we are doing, we are providing an end-to-end service model from advisory through consulting and infrastructure and application outsourcing. I'm in the industry for, it says 25 plus years on that slide. Actually, this month it's 30 years that I'm in the pharmaceutical and the life science industry. And out of the 30 years, I spent most of the time in pharmaceutical production, also with the implementation, or mainly with the implementation of MES solutions. All right, so the corona crisis. I mean, I think we all know the figures. I mean, they are told us in the news every day, be it in the newspapers, be it on internet, be it in the evening on our favorite television program. So this is data just recently from the Johns Hopkins University. So we hit the 10 million mark in regards of corona crisis, and as you see, that's still kind of a very, very steep curve. So I don't know how you feel about that, but when that all started hitting Europe by the end of February, beginning of March, I personally, I wasn't expecting that kind of impact and that kind of magnitude at that time. What we all learned in the last few months is that there is huge economical impact. And what you see here is the prediction for the, or that's the just the Q1. It's even not the prediction for this year. That's just the recession and the GDP growth for the Q1 in 2020. And I mean, we see the entire planet more or less in red. So which means there's a huge impact of -5% or even more of recession. And this is the greatest recession that we have ever seen. But it's not only impacting the economy, but it's also impacting very much the social life. So unemployment is one thing, and I don't want to debate and discuss about the differences here in predicted unemployment rates for 2020. But we all, in most of the countries that we are living, we had variations of lockdown. So in some countries it was a bit more strict than in others. I'm living in Switzerland, so we have been not that very much impacted by lockdown, but also there was, let's say, a light version probably of the lockdown compared to what other countries like Italy or France have experienced. So there was a huge impact on our social life. I mean, we could not visit friends, we could not visit family. The entire social and cultural life from mid of March until mid of June basically was coming to a standstill. So here in Switzerland, in the neighboring countries, opening up started in the mid of June. Until then, it was basically not possible to come together in larger groups, at least legally. What's still not possible is, as everybody knows, I mean, there are no concerts, it's very, cinemas are just opening up here in this area, but I mean, there are no larger events that are taking place. And actually, there are also no conference taking place, but this one was anyway planned as an online conference. But what we also learned in the last few months is that a lot of these conferences where we are coming together, sharing experience and also networking isn't possible anymore. A lot of us have been gone through the financial crisis in 2008, yeah, but this crisis here is different. I mean, the global financial crisis, this is what the economists call it, an ingenious crisis. I mean, this was based upon poorly managed things within the global financial system. Let's put it this way. But the Corona crisis, is exogenous to the global financial system. So, and it's not only just hitting the financial system, it's hitting many industry much harder than the 2008 financial crisis. So, and if you look into the travel industry, for example, I mean, traveling was not possible for the last few months and it's still difficult. So there's a huge impact on the travel industry and everything that is related to the travel industry. So the entire air flight industry. I mean, all the not all, but many of the airplanes have been grounded for the last few months, and it will take probably a few years for these industries to recover from the losses that they are doing this year, and they're still doing. And there are some other examples of other industries as well. So one example, for example, is the automotive industry. So in March 2020, automotive companies in Europe, like Volkswagen, Mercedes, and so on, were suspending their production across Europe as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And first of all, I mean, they were suffering in sales. Of course, I mean, if the whole society is facing a crisis like this, the last thing that you're thinking probably about is buying a new car. I mean, as long as your other car is still working. But the other thing that also happened is that supply chains were disrupted. I mean, as everybody knows, the Corona crisis erupted in China earlier than in Europe. So, and as a lot of the parts in order to manufacture the cars were coming out of China or Asia, the cars just couldn't be manufactured. So they suspended manufacturing. And so if you have ordered a car in January to be delivered maybe in April, you didn't get the car, you just got it later. I mean, we are talking about the pharmaceutical industry. So we are in the life science industry. We cannot afford to suspend our production without putting the life of our patients at risk. So other than the automotive industry, taking this as an example, Other than the automotive industry, we just cannot close down production and tell our patients, oh, we are sorry, but we didn't get any ingredients or whatsoever material that we need in order to produce from other countries. So you don't get your medicine, and oh, we are quite sorry, but this is going to impact your life or your health. So we have an obligation legally, but also towards our patients to deliver and to keep the promise that we're going to deliver them with the medicine that they need. Life-saving medicine or not life-saving medicine. We have an obligation, a legal obligation, and we have an ethical obligation to deliver. So just want to emphasize, I mean, we in the pharmaceutical industry, we cannot afford to suspend production or put it in hold like the automotive industry has done. So, but one of the things that happened, and that what I observed then in the pharmaceutical industry, is that this crisis amplified some of the problems that I think are existing in life science production supply chain already for many years. I mean, for many, many years, we are talking about drug shortages. There's a drug shortage program by the FDA, for example. Same goes for some of the raw materials that we need. The lead times for production in this times of the crisis becoming even more unpredictable than before. And in a lot of production facilities are already, I wouldn't say suffering, but they're experiencing unpredictable lead times when it comes to production schedules. And this has been even amplified during the crisis. So we experienced delayed delivery. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry kept on producing, of course, I mean, because of all the reasons that we mentioned before, but we experienced delays. What we are producing, we need to document. I mean, there is no way that we are not documented what we are producing. So either we do that on paper, or we do that with an electronic batch recording system supported by an MES, for example. So, but either or, I mean, in the pharmaceutical industry, we are still experiencing documentation issues because everything that we need to do needs to be documented. We need to print labels, we need to print batch records, we need to fill in batch records. In this time where we need to be very, very agile, it becomes more evident than in other times probably. And what was hurting us, I think really, really quite a lot was the lack of visibility in production and supply chain that we had in some of the sites. I'm not talking generally about the pharmaceutical industry and saying that all the manufacturing sites are impacted by these problems, but what we've seen that a lot of the manufacturing sites have been impacted by the one or the other or some of these problems. And in order, what we did in the past quite often is, I mean, we kept the inventory levels quite high. And this was often a result from all the issues that I mentioned before. And one of the reasons that resulted into these issues is that we have a landscape of non-integrated solutions that we use in order to manage our supply chain, our production, our quality. And that results at the end of the day also in the lack of agility in production and supply chain. So at the end of the day, I believe the life science production supply chain is today a very fragile system. And this was amplified by the crisis that we have seen for the last few months. So the impact on the ability to produce is that supply chains are disrupted. And in the pharmaceutical industry, of course, I mean, we are doing everything in order to avoid that. We have to cope with an unpredictable unpredictable demand. Countries have been in lockdown. I mentioned that before. I mean, there was a social impact, but it also had an impact on the ability to go to work. I mean, something that that we were doing every day, taking our car, taking the train, taking the tram, taking our bicycle, whatsoever, and commuting to work. So all of a sudden, it became difficult. And this is also coming back to one of the previous slides, a big difference to the financial crisis, the global financial crisis that we have seen in 2008. So employees in production, they cannot go into social distancing. They cannot work from home. I mean, they need to operate the facilities. They need to operate the machines. They need to operate the quality control labs. So they have to be on site. And I'm living here in Basel, which is kind of a tri-state area. So we are close to the border of Germany. We are close to the border of France. And we have not been only in lockdown, but also the borders have closed. So people needed a permission in order to cross the borders. So there was an impact on employees getting into production facilities. It was not that high that people couldn't get into production facilities. As I said, there have been permissions for people that needed to cross the border in order to go to work. But as an employee in a production facility, you couldn't do your work from home. So at the end of the day, we experienced a reduced available workforce. And this was mainly due to the necessary precautionary measures, not necessarily to people who have been infected by the coronavirus. All the plans that we have done for 2020 in regards of production forecasts and plans were absolutely waste by April 2020. I mean, whatever we have done in the last quarter or second quarter or third quarter of 2019 in order to forecast 2020, I mean, this was total waste by April 2020. So that had also a tremendous impact on the way and what we're going to produce. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, well, is my production and supply chain network robust enough for this crisis? I mean, have you been really prepared for this crisis in our production and supply chain network? So why is information and automation crucial at that time? I think, and I would like to talk about and focus on two important assets here. One of them is automation and the other one is information. So I don't want to go too much in detail about automation, but automation helps us to become independent from employees to do certain actions in production or in the lab. So where we can automate, we become more independent from the actual employees having the ability to come to work. And as I said, I don't want to go into detail with the automation part of that, but I would like to go a little bit more in detail in regards of, well, why is information key? And in order to be able to produce, we need information about material availability. We need information about material logistics in order to move material from one place, for example, the warehouse, into the production area and throughout the production area. We need to have information about our availability of the workforce. So who is available for certain shifts in order to produce? And do we have the right skills available as well? I mean, are the people trained and certified in order to execute certain production processes? And then also we need to have all the information about our production assets. I mean, at the end of the day, we need them in order to produce, and the same goes for the lab, by the way, as well. And all that is essential to ensure that we are able to produce. And even that is amplified when nothing is normal anymore, like in the times of crisis, because we have potentially a reduced availability of workforce, which has then an impact in order to plan the workforce availability, but also taking into consideration the workforce skills at the same time. And the same for the material and the material logistics. So when nothing is normal anymore, all this information is even more important than before. It is always important, but it's more important. And also what it is more important in these times is that this information is available in real time. So we need to get access to all that information, and we have to have that information available in real time. So, which means we need to have information about material availability, material logistics, workforce availability, skills, production assets, and many others as well. And there is one system in the production area that provides all that information, and this is an MES. So MES provides us all that information that we need in order to be able to produce in real time. And this is where I strongly believe that an MES is an absolutely crucial asset in these times of a crisis. And on top of that, it allows also to do certain activities from home. So reviewing batch records, for instance, or investigation of deviations. You can go into the system, review the batch record, or investigate deviations that happened on the shop floor. You can do production planning, scheduling, and all these kind of things. You can do that without necessarily commuting every day to your factory. So you can access your MES system or your other systems as part of the production network and execute all your activities from home. So this gives us the flexibility and the agility that we need in order to keep our production facilities running in the times of a crisis. But we cannot look at an MES as an isolated system. I mean, at the end of the day, we have been talking about all the information that we need in order to execute production. So which means the factory of the future needs to be integrated. So it needs to be an integrated IT/OT architecture with the planning system, with the MES, the LIMS, in order to manage lab orders and information that goes into the lab, but also coming out of the lab. We need to integrate. We need to have an integrated learning management system in order to understand what are the skills that certain operators, certain employees on the shop floor are having. So where can I plan with my staff in regards of production execution, lab execution, and so on. And in order to get all that information out of the machines, we need an integrated OT layer where we are connecting our MES, our LIMS to our devices in the lab, but also on the shop floor in production. So what should companies do in order to prepare for the next crisis? I mean, I think, and this comes with every extraordinary situation. There's always something that you need to take away from that situation in order to learn for the next one. So I think there was a lot of learning that could be done and has been done from the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. But what is it what we should learn as an industry, but also as an individual company in order to plan for the next crisis that may have a magnitude like this Corona crisis, or maybe it's even a larger crisis. I think currently the attention of most of the companies is to keep the lights on in production. So the focus is, let's get the medicine out of the door into the supply chain so that we can deliver on our promise and deliver medicine to our patients. But as I said, I mean, now is exactly the right moment to learn and to plan for the next crisis. At the end of the day, based upon one of the slides that I showed earlier, where I'm saying the production and supply chain network is a very fragile system in the pharmaceutical industry. We need to plan for a more robust design in production and supply chain. So what can we do in order to plan, to learn and plan for that? So first of all, well, we can review what is our current production supply and supply chain IT and OT architecture. Are we talking about a production and supply chain IT and OT architecture that is fully integrated and allows us that visibility on the information that we need in order to manage manufacturing? But also then assess your current maturity and ability to master a crisis like this. So this means, well, what is the maturity of your processes? What is the maturity of your organization? What is the maturity of your technology, and how integrated is the technology with your processes, the organization, and with the other systems within your architecture? So, and this allows you, based upon these learnings, to design a more resilient architecture, a more resilient processes, more resilient organization that hopefully puts you into the situation to master a crisis much smoother, much better than we have probably done that today. And of course, I mean, all that comes together with business continuity management, and it's also the time in order to review and update your business continuity plans. I mean, this is where you experience what has been working good and what has been working not that well in your business continuity plans. So take the time right now with the experience you're making today and update your plans. So at the end of the day, I mean, a new and robust architecture will set the foundation for a digital operations model. And based upon the learnings out of this crisis, in order to prepare for a crisis that probably comes or probably comes not in the future, a more robust architecture will also provide you daily benefits for higher transparency, higher visibility on your operations, be it in production, be it in the laboratory, be it in supply chain. It provides you, if you have this end-to-end architecture where information is exchanged between lab, all the systems on the shop floor, in production, and your supply chain. It provides you with much higher agility and flexibility to respond to situations that we consider as not normal, where you need that flexibility and then that agility. And ultimately, it provides you also improvements in productivity and quality. A system which is in an architecture which is much more robust is not as fragile, of course, as the architecture today, provides you the information that is required in order to increase your productivity, increase the quality. So thank you very much for having me here today, and I'm happy to answer also some questions which are probably coming from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thomas, thank you very much for your presentation and insight. I think it's always good to have an overview of the current situation. And I'd like to encourage the audience to ask questions. There's one that I would like to ask. What is your, summing it all up, what is your #1 recommendation for companies or production facilities as the first thing to do now to respond to this situation? Where would you guide them and say this is where you should start?
Probably the most important thing that I would do is I would do would start and do that maturity assessment, and do it also in a kind of a very structured way. Yeah, so that we understand what is the current maturity of our processes, the current maturity of our organization, technology, and architecture. Because this gives you a lot of answers where you can improve, and there you can identify where you have the biggest potential in order to improve, in order to prepare for a crisis. So you identify the things that have probably not going that well, but also in order to improve for your day-to-day operations. So I would start with with a very structured maturity assessment of my production. Yeah.
Very well, thank you very much. And to those companies who already have an MES installed, where could they go next? Where do you see most potential to improve?
As I said, I mean, I think an MES is absolutely essential in order to provide that visibility that we need in regards of managing our production. If you already have an MES, I still would go for that review, but put the focus on the architecture. So is my MES and is my entire IT OT architecture integrated to a degree where I can, where I have that agility and flexibility in regards of having information available in real time or at the time when I need them to master such a crisis. So if you have already an MES, my focus would be on the architecture. So do I have an integrated architecture that allows me to exchange information across my production network and the supply chain?
Super. Thank you very much, Thomas. If there are no further questions, you can see Thomas's contact details on the slide that he is showing currently. So please feel free to reach out to him directly if you need further advice. Maybe Thomas, one quick outlook from you. What do you think? How is the situation going to evolve over the next few weeks and months?
It's very hard to predict because I think also geographically we have different. We're facing different timelines here, different situations. I think over the rest of 2020, we will go back to some kind of status of normal, also in the production and supply chain. I think so far the pharmaceutical industry has managed it quite well, but also then with the